Hello, everyone. It is a new year, and I'm starting a little early to do this Facebook Live for you, and I could hardly wait. So usually I start at 4 or 5, but what time is it? 2:06 California time. And I've been writing this morning, trying to gather my thoughts about things that I wanted to share in the new year. And I think I have some pretty good points that I'd love to share with you. So for those of you who don't know me really, my name is Sandy Peckinpah, and I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I'm a real estate agent in Southern California. And I passionately love sharing my stories and the things that I have learned from my own life, the things that I've learned from others, and I want to share that with you. So here I am. Jane, welcome. Jackie, so nice to see you on this new year, January day of New Year. So the new year changes have already begun, and I can certainly feel them. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's a bit chaotic. In fact, I had a little trouble sleeping last night because I felt like this chaos was something rolling around inside of me that needed to be opened up and addressed and confronted and figured out. And a lot of it has to do with my current state of mind where, I feel like every new year there's an obligation to make these great revelations. And sometimes that's just too much pressure. So I decided to live with the chaos a little bit and get out my trusted journal, and I'm writing in this one right now. This was one that my daughter gave me. It says, "Create a little magic every day." And I started writing about the chaos. And there's a book that I wanted to share with you called The Way of Transition. It's by William Bridges, and he's a transition expert. I've been following him for, decades now, because he first came into my sphere of vision I think in the 90s maybe, but maybe not that long ago. Anyway, he wrote these two books, The Way of Transition and Transitions. And he talks about how chaos is actually the door to transition. When you're feeling that chaos, you know that something's waiting in the wings. And you have to have the courage to take that next step into the doorway where you could see exactly where you're supposed to go. And so stepping out of chaos is actually the next step, because taking that next step finally helps you have a clearer vision on where you want to go and who you want to be. And so this morning, I want to go back in time to when I first became aware of the way of transition and the chaos, and it was decades ago. And I began asking myself, who am I? I'd had so many life changes. I had been living in Westlake Village in Los Angeles for most of my life. And, I'd had all kinds of things happen in a very short space of time. A lot of loss, a lot of identity changes, moving, being the sole support of my family, taking my children to a little town outside of Los Angeles. And I began asking, who am I? I don't know anymore. Who am I? And what I learned is that there's a secret place inside of your brain that has the knowledge that you need, or can tell you where to get the knowledge, but it stays inside of your brain until you ask it to come out. And how did I do that? I did it through journaling, because I learned that writing is an extension of what you're thinking. And by writing down your thoughts, it's a way of looking at them from a new perspective, through different eyes. And it was life-changing. When you learn the discipline of journaling, it's tapping into an awareness like a meditation. When you continue to practice this throughout your life, you are always receiving new information and guidance. It's the most life-changing tool that you could ever imagine, and it lives inside of your brain. People today are calling it learning about your mindset and mindset practices, and journaling is certainly one of those mindset practices. And what took my journaling a step further was actually writing and putting my work out there. It took my life to a whole other level because suddenly my thoughts weren't secret anymore. I began sharing my story in writing, and I had written books before, but never anything so personal as my experience in losing my son. And then I started writing about those life transitions and those life changes and the feelings that I had in walking through that path of grief and that path of restoration and resilience. And I started writing about that. And I found out that I wasn't alone, that other people felt just like me. And it was such a rewarding feeling because suddenly I found a path for my thoughts to put out in the world, and it became a purpose of mine. And I knew that my life, I had lived my life, and now it was my time to share my story. Once you become aware of your thoughts, your true thoughts, you can never become unaware. And that's the truth. You'll catch yourself because once you're aware that you have the capability of creating your future by shaping your thoughts, by giving a moment of your inner mind, your secret mind, a place to pour out onto the written page, it is truly life-changing. It's a way of listening to your life like never before. It's a proactive way of living life instead of a reactive way. And it feels amazing. You get a chance to look at both sides of a story. You get to have positive and negative feelings because you're looking at it from a new perspective. When you look back on your life, you don't want to get stuck on what would have happened if. And, oh, if only this hadn't happened. Well, that's a form of, in grief recovery, they call it bargaining, where you have this magical thinking going on that you could go back in time and change the way things happened. And Lord knows if I could, I would. I think we all would. We all have those times when we wish we could change our thoughts and the way we reacted and what happened to us. But we don't have that opportunity. So when you get stuck on the bargaining phase of grief or the bargaining phase of looking back on your life, like if only I had, or if that hadn't happened, you can get stuck. And that can stop you from really living your best life. And I saw something by Will Smith that was so profoundly life-changing for me. He's doing a series called the Red Table Series on YouTube. And if you haven't watched it, please do, because there are some of them that are so life-changing. And this one on fault and responsibility was something that I played a couple of times because I wanted to hear it over and over again. And he said, when something bad happens in our lives, we want to find fault somewhere. And it can eat away at us, and we can have certain behaviors that we do in retaliation that are not good for us. Or you cut off people or places or friends because of it. But he says you have the capability of figuring out how to fix it. He says it is your responsibility to deal with the potential traumas so that you can live a happy life. So he says it's not your fault that something bad happened to you, but it is your responsibility to deal with it and to fix it so that you figure out a way to live the rest of your life. Not blaming doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means acknowledging what has happened and accepting it and finding out a way to learn how you can live your life from this moment on. And I have certainly had to do that so many times in my life. And I'm so grateful again for those of you who've just joined me. I talk about how we all have this secret tool inside of us that we don't even use. So many of us don't use. And that tool is using your brain to process your thoughts by writing them down. And once you write them down in a journal or a notebook or however you want to choose it, a lot of people call it notebooking. When you use that tool, you have an opportunity to observe your life from a different perspective, because suddenly writing it down and seeing your thought on paper is a whole lot different than letting it mull around in your mind forever. And that tool is the key to really looking at this next year, who it is you want to be, and ask those hard questions. Who am I? Who am I? It really makes so much sense. And I can tell you, this is a way of listening to your life, listening to your thoughts, and your clues are already inside of your brain just waiting to get out. Your life is full of surprises. If you just learn to recognize the opportunities in your thoughts, you have a whole different way of living your life, from one of being a reactive life to a proactive life. There's a man, Viktor Frankl, who is a Holocaust survivor and philosopher, and I often quote him because his book, Man's Search for Meaning, was so life-changing for me, among other books, but it was. And he says that there are 3 things that give meaning to life. 1, a project. Number 2, a significant relationship. And number 3, a redemptive view of suffering. Now, what did he mean by that? He speaks to me like no other on that subject, because he says the moment your suffering finds meaning, it's transformed. And I know from having lost my son, the moment I figured out a way and what my purpose was in walking through the grief path and then writing about it and having my book out there for other parents, I know that was the transformation for me, where I was able to give my son a legacy. And it was the greatest. I have goosebumps thinking about it to this day, because for me it was life-changing. I had a way of giving my son life forever. He grows with me and stays with me every single day. Now, writing fulfills 2 out of 3 of those things that Viktor Frankl talked about: a project, a significant relationship, a redemptive view of suffering. Because it's the relationship with yourself. It's an opportunity to analyze, to muse, to dissect what your life has been. And I want to conclude with a couple of things. One is that the day that I also released my private thoughts and started writing, because I'm a passionate writer, the day that I began writing my thoughts and putting it out there for the world, in books and in my blog, I write for Huffington Post and I write for The Mission and Thrive Global, which is Ariana Huffington's platform for well-being. And all of those places give me a location for those transformative thoughts that go through my mind every day because I committed to journaling in the morning every single day. And now they're out there for the world. And sometimes they help people. And sometimes they give people a new perspective. And there's nothing that feels better than that. And I can tell you that that's exactly what Viktor Frankl said about giving meaning to life, a project. So I took my relationship with myself and gave meaning through a project. And it gave me a redemptive view of suffering because my suffering was transformed. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share with you and that you've been listening to me. And I know some people ask me about blogging because I've written so many blogs and I absolutely love it. And for those that don't know the term blog, it comes from weblog, meaning articles on the web. And so articles now, as you know, newspapers are on the web. Huffington Post is on the web. So that's where my articles go. I was a writer for a print magazine, 2 print magazines, in the early 2010, 2011. But I transformed that writing when blogging became so popular. And for those of you who are interested in doing that, I'm going to be doing a 5-day blogging challenge. And I have about 7 or 8 people who are interested already. It's just 5 days, probably half an hour a day, if that. And then you'll be writing your blog and I'll get you up and running on medium.com, which is one of the top blogging platforms in the world. Something like 60 million viewers a week. So anyway, it's an opportunity for you. If you're interested, please connect with me on Facebook or something, and I can tell you more about it. So anyway, I am so glad for this opportunity, and I want to leave you with Brené Brown's great quote. If we can learn how to feel our way through these experiences and own our struggles, our stories of struggle, we can write our own brave endings. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.